Hey, true believers. Chris Mack coming at you today with X Factor number 38. But before we jump into this amazing comic, I do want to make an announcement. The Mrs. and I have finally found a house. So, woohoo! So, it's looking like at the end of the month we're going to be moving. So, reviews are probably going to be sporadic as we're trying to move stuff from the old house into the new house. So, you know how that is. It's always a really fun circus. So just want to let you all know that I haven't disappeared off the face of the earth. Just really going to be busy for the month of March. The month of March. Sorry, I've not had enough coffee. But anyway, speaking of March, the print date on this comic book was March 1989. So this book is officially 32 years old. Whew, that makes me feel old. Anyway, yeah, this was a really heartbreaking book, but by God, it was some good storytelling. And you can just see absolutely amazing cover. And we'll get into what this cover means, but as you can see the symmetry here, how they're just like equally matched in combat. It means something. It's not just a fancy cover, just really great symbolism of what this book stands for. Now, the last issue that was 242, because it ran through X-Men, X Factor, New Mutants, so this was kind of the early days of event books, which I kind of wish, this was my era, because the event books were fun and they were kind of written by a close-knit writing team, as we're now, you'll see an event and it's like, oh yeah, there's 68 books with tie-ins, and you're just like, my God. As with this one, I think there's only like, what was it, maybe 20, I think. Anyway, before we get into Duet, which is aptly named for this book, the print date. I already told you the print date. The creative team is Louise Simonson writing, Walter Simonson penciler, Al Milgrom inker, Joe Rosen letterer, Tom Vincent colorist, Bob Harris editor, and Tom DeFalco editor-in-chief. So, all-star team. Madelyne Pryor, we come to find out, spoiler alert if you guys have never read Inferno or any of these older books, Scott married Madelyne Pryor after Jean Grey died. Had a baby with her, which was Christopher Summers, but Madelyne starts calling him Nathan because she's trying to sully the Summers name. She, at this point, has recruited Havoc as her Goblin King, so he's kind of under her mind control to a degree. All of New York looks like Limbo, and she said that with the sacrifice of Nathan, then she could link Limbo and the world together. That's why during these reads and the tie-ins that were part of it, yeah, that's why everything looks like a hellscape. And, Scott's like, Madelyne, why are you doing this? What do you want? And she's like, vengeance, Scott. Destruction and the death of your son. Now, again, I know I've said this a million times, and you guys can feel free to just tell me to shut up. But if you have Amazon Prime, go watch Chris Claremont's X-Men. And you find out how he was able to write the X-Men for so long. And the people that he worked with that was close-knit, like Ann Nasanti and Louise Simonson. That's why when, if it's not Claremont on a book, like, for example, this is Louise Simonson writing this book, it feels Claremont-esque because they worked side by side. So they understood the characters together. See, a lot of times, writing teams may not know the vibe of a character, and that's why sometimes you're like, wow, this character feels really out of place because it wasn't as tight-knit as it was back in the day. And the art styles, too, always felt similar. Like they had their own little signatures, but it never felt too far off. And again, I miss these traditional days of artwork like this. I miss this style. Well, then again, I always loved Walter Simonson's artwork. And you come to find out that Madelyne, having Jean Grey bound, she's able to kind of use Jean's telekinesis or telekinetic powers to help influence some of these characters. And they start to battle one another. And Scott's saying, the baby, Nathan, is yours. How can you harm him? And I just kind of like how they do her eyes, sort of like this dead, demonic look. And she's like, I was your wife, Scott. You said you loved me. You married me. Promised to stay with me forever. You broke your promise. You abandoned me. You hurt me. Why should we not break this issue of broken union? Ouch. Because, yeah, that's how X Factor #1 started, was Scott saw that Jean was alive, and he just up and left Maddie and the baby to go pursue this. So it was just kind of like, wow. But, yeah, again, as Claremont always said, these characters, X-Men books were always a character-driven drama. Action and stuff would happen, but it always focused on the characters. So Madelyne's gathering a whole bunch of other babies other than just Nathan to sacrifice them. And you see Scott just in torment. He goes, Madelyne, it's me you hate, who betrayed you, lied to you, deserted you. Take me, destroy me if you must, but let the others go. And at that point, everything just goes full tilt. Like, Logan's trying to get to Maddie. Angel gets corrupted by the Goblin King, Longshot and Dazzler. And then there's a pitted moment again between Cyclops and Storm, just like in, I think it was Uncanny X-Men 201, when he was battling for leadership. Now, here's something that's kind of interesting about this book, is while all this is happening, Madelyne's talking to Jean, trying to break her. And you come to find out that Madelyne had an influence in that battle between Scott and Storm. So make sure to read this book because, I was like, oh, wow. They really kind of go back and influence a lot of stuff. And speaking of which, there's a couple of particular important goblins that Madelyne has, and we sort of went over it last issue. I don't want to spoil it. I want you to read this book. But, man, just great work. And then, even though it looks kind of silly, I like how when they get corrupted, how they kind of get this demonic face. And then it starts to focus on Angel and how, he's already been corrupted by Apocalypse, and then he tried to bring himself back. And now he's again corrupted by Madelyne Pryor. And he's fighting with himself. He goes, Apocalypse began my transformation. He changed my body and introduced me to the darkness in my soul. This is his legacy. She promised me power to destroy. I want to, and yet I must fight it, or what will truly be destroyed is myself. And again, she kind of starts to talk about how she's a copy of Jean, essentially, made by Sinister. And she goes, such different needs we have, despite our uncanny resemblance. In nature, no snowflake, no grain of sand is like another. Everything is its own self, individual, except me. That hit hard. Because in a sense, I see what she's getting at and how every human being has their own ideas and thoughts and wants and desires. But she doesn't, because of Sinister's sick eugenics. And you come to find out where her point of birth was, what entailed of it. It goes back to Jean's friend Annie that died when she was a child, that caused her mutant powers to manifest. It also ties back to the Dark Phoenix saga, which in turn goes back to the revival of Jean Grey. So please make sure to go back and read this book, because it even goes back to the Marauders. It goes back to, what's her name? During the fall of the mutants, when she goes through the Siege Perilous, Rama, I think was her name, or Roma, was the one that offered them the chance at life, and how they brought Maddie. And this is where it starts to hurt how Claremont really started to break her down. But I think he had to kill her off because they brought Jean back. So he had to do something with Madelyne. I don't know if that's true or not. Let me know down in the comments. And so again, Longshot was influenced by the Goblin Queen here. And it's really a sweet way how Psylocke helps to try to break him of what happened. And here, something happens, and what Madelyne says is, the only way I can kill you and Scott and that baby, that prize, Sinister's prize, is to kill us all. And even though the book ends, which, I don't want to give everything in context, you come to see just how much this woman has suffered and how much she's as much of a victim. Like, even after you read Inferno and all the things she's done, and how Louise Simonson here works through everything that Claremont had set up with her, you still see how she's a victim of Sinister's machinations, and how in turn everybody's affected. Yeah, I was getting a little teared up while I was reading this, guys, but that's, again, why I was talking about how I love the symmetry of this cover, because they're two sides of the same coin. And just the way that Walter Simonson here just puts this together is absolutely gorgeous. People don't know how to comic like this very much anymore. It's hit or miss, as where back in the day this was consecutive across the board. That's why Marvel back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s and early 90s was called the House of Ideas, because there's fresh stories, fresh artwork. And now everything just feels too recycled. Or, to aptly put, it's a copy of a, you get it. So anyway, guys, X Factor number 38. The death of Madelyne Pryor. Tragically well-written story. Again, as Claremont said, character-driven drama. And the art team on this, the writer, Louise Simonson, absolutely fantastic. And if you are an X-Men fan, this is one you definitely need in your collection. So if you've enjoyed this, please first and foremost support your local comic shop and pick up a copy. If you've enjoyed this review, we really would appreciate if you take a moment to hit that little X-Men bell next to subscribe. And if you wouldn't mind hitting like, share, and subscribe as well. That way, when you when you do that, you can get notified. You can come to the channel. And we love talking with y'all down in the comments below or on our social media pages, which I'll make sure to leave the links down in the description below. So with all that said, thank you for coming and checking out the video and just kind of bearing through, even though I've not had enough coffee. And hope y'all continue to have an absolutely amazing day reading. And happy hunting, true believers.